What's up, buttercups? Welcome to Story Time with a Sketch. Today I'm going to be telling you about this guy, Frédéric Bourdin, and I'm probably butchering that because there was like apostrophes and stuff, and it's French, and I'm not. But anyway, he was born in June 1974, and he was raised mostly by his grandparents. He had a really rough home life. He claims family members physically and mentally abused him and that the neighbor sexually assaulted him. So that was part of the reason why he ran away and started impersonating these other people. His most famous case was Nicholas Barclay, who was a kid that went missing in 1994. He was 13 years old at the time. And Frédéric heard about it in 1997. And he's like, I'm gonna impersonate this kid and like have a family and stuff. So he did, he contacted authorities because he was in France and claimed to be this kid. And when he was flown over to the USA, the sister Carrie, the older sister Carrie, went to meet him, and she was like, oh my God, it's him, like it's my long lost brother, who at the time would have been like 16 or 17. And Frédéric Bourdin was like 23 at the time, I think. And he had brown hair and brown eyes. And the kid, Nicholas, when he went missing, had blonde hair and blue eyes. So Frédéric said the reason for that was because he was caught up in a sex slave ring, which today would be pretty believable. And they changed his hair color and his eye color through like chemicals or something. So anyway, Carrie brings him home and the whole family is ecstatic, just excited to have their boy home. Everyone except for Jason, who was the older brother. And he was like, a little suspicious of Frédéric. But people feel like maybe part of the reason that Jason was suspicious was because he had something to do with his little brother Nick's disappearance. It was never proven, and Jason ended up, in the future dying of a drug overdose. So who knows? Some people say that was an intentional drug overdose. But anyway, Frédéric lived with them for almost 5 months. Investigators were like, I don't think this is your son, and the mom would be like, no, it's my son, it's Nicholas. But finally, one investigator compared their ears from like pictures because they wouldn't let, the investigators take a blood test or a DNA test to prove whether Frédéric was Nick or not. So anyway, so they're like, the ears don't match, this isn't your son. And finally, they're like, all right, this isn't Nicholas. He ended up getting I think he was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but I don't think he served all 6 years. He did serve 5 of them. And then he was sent back over to France. So he gets out of prison, he goes back to France, and then he decides to impersonate this kid, Leo Bally, who went missing when he was 6 years old, and at the time would have been 14. But of course, police right away do a DNA test, and they're like, no, you're not Leo Bally. So now it's 2004, and he decides to impersonate this kid, Ruben Sanchez Espinosa, whose mom had died in the Madrid bombings. And of course, right away, the police are like, no, they deported him back to France. So now it's 2005. Frédéric is 31 years old, and he decides to assume the identity of this kid, Francisco Hernandez Fernandez, who was still in school at the time. So he's playing a teenager, he's 31 years old. He had a receding hairline that he'd cover with a hat. He was using dilapidatory creams for his face so that his facial hair wouldn't show. And he played that guy for a month. He pretended to be him. Things were going well, but then an administrator at the school saw an expose on Frédéric Bourdin and was like, I know that guy. He's in my school. He's pretending to be this student. So he gets arrested, he goes to court, and he tells the judge he's sorry and he's lonely. He was just looking for a family. He'll never do it again. And the judge decides you know what? He didn't kill anybody. He didn't, hurt anybody physically. So he goes easy on him. He gives him 4 months. So he serves his 4 months, gets out of prison, and then doesn't get in trouble anymore. It's been 15 years, and he, hasn't gotten in trouble for impersonating anybody. He did meet a woman and get married, and then he pulled a Michael Scott and had 100 kids. I'm just kidding, he had 5 kids. But he recently, I saw in an article, he was complaining that his wife left him for another man in 2017. And I was like, oh, that's sad. But then I was like, wait, he has a Facebook. So then of course I gotta look him up on Facebook and see if I can learn anything else from inside the head of this guy that did all these impersonations. And at first, like, I looked him up and I just saw a bunch of pictures of deer and flowers and fields and stuff. And I was like pretty disappointed because I was like, oh, like, I don't know, I just was expecting more, I guess. But then I realized that I actually looked up the wrong Frédéric Bourdin, and I found the right one, and sure enough, he's got like pictures of his kids and stuff. And he seems like he's still kind of lonely and kind of sad, but he's happy because he has his kids. He did kind of blame the media for his impersonations. I mean, obviously it was his choice to do them, but he said, like, I guess at the time he liked getting the notoriety of, you know, being called the chameleon and impersonating all these people. But now that he has kids, and his kids have been like affected by it, so now he hates it. He just recently like moved somewhere unknown because he wants to start over with his kids and let them have, you know, a good life. So here is my sketch of him. He's got a little bit of a Frida Kahlo thing going on over here, and he has a neck this time. So yeah, if you liked my story and my sketch, please comment and like and subscribe.